Hey there, Jerry here. So this might sound like something of a trick question. Did Jesus command us to love ourselves? Well, here's the deal. In the book of Matthew, there is a scene, if you will, where the Pharisees, the rulers of the Jewish law, or I should say keepers of the Jewish law, are trying to trip up Jesus. They're trying to trap him. They're trying to basically condemn him with his own words. So they ask him about controversial issues. They ask him about resurrection. And then they ask him about taxes. The Sadducees and the Pharisees, both trying to trip him up. And Jesus, of course, being God, they're not going to get the best of him. And he answers brilliantly, and there's nothing they can do to refute him. So you have that going on, and then this happens. One of the teachers of the law came and heard them debating. Noticing that Jesus had given them a good answer, he asked him, of all the commandments, which is the most important? The most important one, answered Jesus, is this: Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. Love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul, with all your mind and with all your strength. The second one is love your neighbor as yourself. There is no commandment greater than these. So for 20 centuries, people have been debating, okay, did Jesus command us to love ourselves? Or is he just stating the obvious? You do love yourself. You think about yourself. You talk about yourself. You talk to yourself. And we do, even if we're smart enough not to do it out loud. We don't think about anyone as much as we think about us, because we live with us. It's me, 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 me. And that Jesus is acknowledging, yeah, you love yourself. Now love others that way. James Beavers, a faith writer that I found online, and I just found two people who represent each side of this argument. Active striving, he writes, for the love of self leaves us dissatisfied and usually fails. In my experience, he writes, there is even a correlation between depression and reliance on self-love. Self-love is one of our highest forms of self-deception, he writes. We gorge ourselves on the biblical truth of our human worth, being created in God's image, but refuse to swallow the balancing truth that our own sin has robbed us of loveliness. Self-love is fundamentally unsatisfactory and lacking because we are somehow expected to ignore half of who we are as sinful humans. James Beavers. Now, Beavers is talking about the secular, the of this world definition of self-love. I'm okay. I can drink too much. I can have indiscriminate sex. I can gamble too much. But I'm okay with me. Well, Jesus wasn't saying that. And Beavers is off the mark when he says there's a sinful half and a Jesus half. Now, when we accept Jesus Christ, we get all of him, even if he didn't get all of us. We are a new, transformed self. The sinful half, as Beaver calls it, really is a separate entity. Our old, unregenerated, sinful self. Here's the other side. Nikki Kozares. People who struggle to love themselves struggle to love their neighbor. Somehow, the message to love yourself like God does was turned into pride. People with too much confidence in themselves were deemed arrogant or full of themselves. Nobody wanted that, and so we ran in the opposite direction, she writes, creating this unhealthy consequence in thinking low of others. Yet that route seems to have left us in disobedience to this command, because then we also think lowly of ourselves. So what is the answer? I believe the answer is we do have to love ourselves. We have to have the tough love of self. What is the tough love of self? You have to love yourself enough to let your sinful self go. You know, the old expression, if you love something, let it go. If it comes back, so on and so on. This, if you love yourself enough, let the old sinful, filthy self go and pray that it never comes back. Surrender yourself entirely to Christ. It's not a matter of, I had someone say this to me recently, there are some things I have to give up. This person still binge drinks and some other things, social media. And I said, no, it's not what you have to give up, it's who you have to give up. Delights of the earth that we take too great of delight in, that we overindulge in, those are things, but they are indicators of our old self. And it takes a lot of self-love to give up that old self completely to Christ and accept Him completely. As C.S. Lewis put it, it's the hardest easy thing we'll ever do. It's hard. We love those things of this world. But once you do, it's easy. So, I think the answer is yes. Jesus did command us to love ourselves enough to let go of our sinful self and let Him fill our hearts and our lives. God bless.